standing in front of one of several landfills owned by the Solutia Company here in the town of Anniston, Alabama. Solutia has taken thousands of tons of contaminated soil and placed them in this landfill and the two capped landfills approximately 100 yards from me. According to project manager Pam Scully, an EPA official, this uncapped landfill poses no risk whatsoever to the residents that live as close as 200 yards from where I am standing. Yesterday, I asked Pam Scully, the EPA official who oversees this cleanup, what the average amount of PCBs is in the soil that is dumped at this landfill.
I think it's probably around 5 parts per million because there are a lot of residential properties that are right at 1, and we don't bring anything above 10. So average is probably around 5 parts per million.
I asked Michael Stevenson, a senior EPA attorney who helped develop the cleanup agreement between Solutia Pharmacia and EPA, whether or not PCB-contaminated soil was being dumped in the proximity of people's homes.
I couldn't say that it's not in the proximity, depending on what you mean by the term proximity. So you can talk to Pam about how close it is to certain residential properties.
When I asked Pam Scully, she acknowledged that people were living as close as 150 feet from the landfill.
There is a residential neighborhood probably 150, 200 feet away. The soil is being placed in an area where there's a depression. It was a borrow pit area, so it's difficult for that neighborhood to even see the area where we're placing the soil. It's not visually something that they have to look at every day, and but it is, it's not that far away from residential properties. There are residential properties that are around those landfill areas.
I asked if the people living across the street could be affected by the PCB-contaminated soil that is being dumped at the landfill. They're not affected by all this.
It's very likely that was one of the properties where a cleanup occurred originally. We have some residential properties along this road where the cleanup occurred, but no, what they visually can't really see that area where the soil is being taken, and we do a lot of work. We have monitors out there to make sure the dust is kept down. If the dust ever starts to get out of control, we use water basically to wet down the area and keep it maintained in that area.
Right. So how frequently do you monitor the dust levels?
They're monitored. Anytime soil is being brought in, they're monitored. When soil is not being brought in, we have a piece of plastic basically that is put over the soil so that
has there been times where the dust being monitored has shown that levels are slightly dangerous?
We're far enough away from the residences that if we monitor dust where we're disposing of it, and if we detect any kind of release, we take action to keep it down, and we feel like we've protected residents that may be several hundred feet away.
Being released here has any effect whatsoever on the health of residents of here? Okay. Professor David Carpenter, a PCB scientist formerly brought in as an expert witness on behalf of Anniston residents in their lawsuit against Monsanto, disagrees with Scully.
Well, I don't agree with that at all. While I'm very much in favor of digging up and removing contaminated soil from people's yards, stashing it in an open pit nearby is probably going to increase rather than decrease the spread in the short term. There is an enormous amount of literature that shows that when water evaporates from contaminated soil, PCBs go into the air with it.
Given the proximity of residences to the landfill, I asked if access to it was an issue.
We can effectively control access to it by keeping it on site, and that's why we've done that.
As you can see, the gate behind me is wide open. There are virtually no signs on any of the surrounding fences indicating that access is prohibited.
Well, this is obviously not controlled at all, and it is inexcusable to have something like that without warning signs, without gates. Now, kids are inquisitive everywhere, and it's always difficult to keep kids out of something, even if there are signs and locked gates. But to have the gate wide open and have no signs is absolutely irresponsible.